is this time-honored idea. Less is more.
Great speech.
For my next act, I propose that in these current chaotic times where artists struggle to find suitable pathways forward, we need a new mantra to stand alongside less is more. However, before I put this new mantra into words, let me speak of another phrase I learned years ago. I came to know the theater face to face while acting against my will in my high school Christmas play in 1948. I found acting was grand, and I was hooked as easily as a skilled trout fisherman hooks a rainbow. Flash forward a bit. I was not very deep into my lifelong love of the theater, and these pages will stick together. Just why is that? As you get older, they stick harder. I was not very deep into my lifelong love of the theater when I learned, probably while reading Theater Arts magazine, that the art form I was about to give my life to frequently was referred to as the magnificent invalid. Now, this was a heavy concept and one I seriously mused upon as I wrestled with the danger inherent in my desire to be an actor. The magnificent invalid, a powerful image. Invalid warned me that I was falling in love with an art form that always and eternally would be in imminent danger of dying. Dying is not much on the mind of a 16-year-old other than to not do it now. Nor was magnificent a word that touched much upon my life. It was, however, a thoroughly enticing word. Contemplating magnificent, I saw that it could stand for so many other tantalizing ideas. If I gave my life to the theater, I'd be in a discipline that would ask its adherents to be tough, to be dedicated, to be passionate, to be David striding out to confront Goliath. Most significantly, I saw in the word magnificent the strong suggestion that the theater would survive, might even triumph, might even be eternal. At age 16, a time when we possess a certainty that we'll always be young and strong and ready for any challenge, I intellectually accepted that it was going to be a struggle. That some of the time I'd be companion to an invalid, but magnificent offered assurance. Deep might be the scars and gashes inflicted upon the theater, but she would prevail because she was magnificent. With the promise of that magnificence, I decided to throw in with her. Over the ensuing 70 years, it's been a jolly ride with a great deal of magnificence, like riding a stallion at the head of a parade, along with a few harrowing downtimes creeping along in a wheelchair. Now, on to my take on dealing with the current crisis in the theater. I propose we must hang on to the adage, less is more, but we must add to it this equally pithy construct. The old is now the new. Let me define old. Here are some facts about the nature of the theater when I became enthralled with it in the late 1940s. First, it existed primarily to entertain. In that process, the best kind of theater made us laugh, or made us cry, or made us think by telling us stories over and over again about what it means to be a flawed human being. Second, most of the literature of that time fell into the category we call realism, with this proviso: it never forgot that it was an artivist and owed its roots to ancient drama where there was no effort to disguise the inherent theatricality. However, in the 40s, theater artists were dedicated to something we call fourth wall realism, Adhering to this principle, actors pretended that the action was in a space with four walls, with the fourth wall removed to allow the audience to spy on them. A rule we followed as actors was never to make eye contact with the audience. Come on, Paige, behave. We performed mostly in box sets that represented real rooms, and we went about behaving realistically for the most part. Now get this, because this is seminal. These actors from another time never forgot the audience was out there, beyond the fourth wall, and it had to be carefully tended to if the play was to happen where it's needed to happen, which is in the audience. Honoring that idea, actors sent as much energy as they could possibly manage through the fourth wall to the audience directly. Example, they constructed a sight gag to be sure spectators would see it and see it well. Why? Because getting the laugh depended on a kind of carefully honed technique. Artifice. Lovely word. Let me say it again. Artifice. Third, plays were well made. They followed Aristotle's advice and had a beginning, a middle, and an end. At their core, they raised a discernible dramatic question and concluded with a climax that provided an organic and satisfying answer to the dramatic question. Example, in Bus Stop, the question is, will the boy, Bo, get the girl, Cherie? Answer, you bet. Not without first learning how to be a genuine man, not a boy. Fourth, the theater was not a proactive art. Its goal was not to move society to new levels of morality. Instead, it was a reflective art form. Instead, it held a mirror up to nature, reflecting what it saw with the hope that audiences would see themselves in the mirror and take action to initiate change. Side note, when entertaining remains the theater's primary goal, its most effective method is to stimulate the social change is comedy. Isn't that a laugh? Fifth, production values were common sense. An advertising slogan today for an insurance company advises, only pay for what you need. In the 50s, that seemed to be the mantra followed by scene designers. When scenery is being designed, if you only pay for what you need, the adage, less is more, will probably be honored. Now, the theater is about 2,500 years old. Here's a startling fact. For most of those years, the theatrical style used was what we today call presentational. That means not a great deal of attention was paid to making everything about the production appear lifelike. If artists in these earlier times were able to think of the whole scope of history, they might conclude, hey, you know what? Making it all seem to be lifelike can wait for the invention of the movies. So theater stuck to its long tradition of presentationalism. Then around 1890, there was a huge shift in theatrical style with the introduction of representational works. The goal became to make what occurred on stage seem to be as close to real life as possible. Realism. It took from 534 BC to 1890 for the theater to come to this shift. Out with the old presentational theater and in with the new representational theater. Serendipitously, that's better, isn't it? Surreptitiously, about the same time that realism in the theater was beginning to dominate, cinema, the art form that does realism at the highest level, also was entering the scene. What was the theater to do now that film had the advantage of creating true realism? The good news is that the excommunication of the old presentational methods was not absolute, and theater, competing with film, rediscovered its old presentational ways. The chorus in Shakespeare's Henry V urges the audience to let his players on your imaginary forces work. He asks them to suppose within the girdle of these walls are now confined two mighty monarchies. That would be the English army commanded by Henry V and the French army commanded by the Dauphin. Realistically, showing these two huge forces is what film does in spades, and it does it representationally. Those flickering images up there on the silver screen are believably real. To compete, the theater must take a different tack. Where film represents, theater must present. For example, in the stage production of Henry V, two actors, clad as fighters, one in the blue of France, one in the red of England, enter with flags of those nations and perform something akin to a dance as they whirl and snap their flags. Perhaps drums are heard rat-a-tatting off stage. Thus, the audience is induced to use their imagination to see two actors presenting, not being, but presenting two mighty armies. And astonishingly, the audience members find they are delighted that their imaginations can create so large a truth from something as minimal as two guys flapping flags. Yee-haw! Less is more indeed. For the last 140 years or so, these two styles of making theater, representational and presentational, have been employed by the theater. Sometimes they've been in conflict. When realism is dominant, we witness a play like Long Day's Journey into Night. At other times, non-realism may triumph, as in Waiting for Godot. Still other times, the two get combined, as in The Life of Pi, a play now running on Broadway. In that work, that was first a novel, then a film, and at this juncture a play, the staging provides a lifeboat into which a boy and a huge Bengal tiger are confined. The boy is an actor, representational. The tiger, I don't want to go to 14, I want to go to 13. Yeah, here we are. The tiger is a composite. It consists of two performers inside a semi-realistic and semi-transparent tiger costume who move the body of the animal. A third actor stands outside, fully visible, outside the tiger, and operates the head of Pi, the head of the tiger, as Pi deals with the need to control the threatening beast if either of them is to survive the disastrous wreck that has placed him at opposite ends of a lifeboat adrift in the vastness of the ocean. I've not seen this play, and my description is courtesy of Betty Howe, a 1971 Hanover College theater grad who did see it. Nevertheless, it seems clear that what Broadway audiences are seeing is a technically astute blend of the representational and the presentational. Additional good news. In this staging of The Life of Pi, I'm pretty sure there's no heavy-handed reprimand of the audience because they've not accepted guilt due them for social injustices committed against certain minority identity groups. Instead, keeping the focus on creating an entertainment, the play dramatizes an engaging story illustrating an old principle, i.e., life can demand great cleverness from humans when they come face to face with sudden and monumental dangers. In conclusion, if the play involves the audience as empathically as did the novel and the movie, Betty Howe tells me it did, then I believe the principles I proposed at the outset of this talk, less is more, and the old is now the new, are abundantly present, and the invalid we call theater is achieving still magnificence.